Good morning, everyone. My name is Dimar S. Sigba from BSED English 3A. So for today's video, I am going to discuss the following questions. So without further ado, let's start. Describe the way of life, beliefs, and religions of the Filipinos during the pre-colonial period. During the pre-colonial period, the way of life in the Philippines is primarily centered around agriculture and fishing. Communities were organized into barangays or small villagers, usually governed by dato or chieftain. They practiced a barter trading, exchanging goods, rice, pottery, and textiles. The beliefs and religions of Filipinos in pre-colonial period, Philippines were deeply rooted in animisms and polytheisms. People believed in spirits and deities that inhabited nature such as trees, rivers, and mountains. They performed rituals to offer sacrifices of the spirits for good protections. Religion practices were integrated into everyday life with anitus or household spirits, like Batala, the supreme god and shaman known as Babaylan. Number two, what are the various causes responsible for the brevity of Philippine literature? Filipino literature has been influenced by Spanish colonialisms and later the long-term presence of Americans. During the Spanish period, Filipinos began to write long poems which mixed nativisms and Catholicisms. This was encouraged by the church who controlled the printing presses until the 1800s. Printing started to replace oral traditions. During these times, native Filipinos created a style of literature based on Spanish ballads called comedia or mora mora. This type of literature deals with the theme of Christianity and its eventual conquering of Muslims. Narrative poems and a wide range of novels followed. Some novels celebrated being Filipino, while others not so subtly compared Spanish colonialism to tyranny. So, American influence on literature had its foundation in the start of free public schools and the establishment of English as a lingua franca, a language that everyone could speak. Education improved the prospect of upward mobility and allowed Filipinos to advance up the socioeconomic ladder. Filipino literature at this time began to mimic American literature. Poems were written in verse form. Fiction was written in the style of American novelists like Ernest Hemingway. Eventually, the blending of English writing with Filipino perspectives took over as Filipinos found their voice in a foreign language. Explain how did the written characters employed by the early Filipinos from those being used today. Baybayin is one of the pre-colonial writing system used by early Filipinos. The term baybayin comes from the Tagalog root word baybay, which means to spell. Printing and publishing began in the Philippines with the arrival of the Spanish in 1565, encountering an enormous number of native languages. The Spaniards felt a pressing need to describe the languages most commonly spoken in the archipelago in order to communicate with the Filipinos. With the establishment of Spanish sovereignty over the Philippines, the Spanish crown issued several contradictory laws regarding language. The missionaries were urged to learn the vernacular languages but were subsequently required to teach Spanish. Number 4. Define the following in one sentence. First is Kudanag. Songs giving accounts of battle. Tagumpay or Talintad. Songs of hanging a captured enemy. Sambutan or Tagulaylay. A mournful song. Hibayis or Iboyis refers to travel song. So Balayang wedding ballad in Batangas. Papuri, which means refers to praise. Unsigup, Bansal, and Pagatin is a premarital and postmarital ceremonies. Kulintang beat or rhythm. Maragtas tells the unusual of Dato. Bangkais twins Adlaw and Bulan and of maturing adventures with the crocodiles. Number 10, Hinilawod. This refers to oldest and longest epic poem of Panay. Ibalon is an ancient epic poem in Bicol. Historia o papasaritaan Pinagbiang ni Lam ang Old Ilocano metrical story, the authorship of which is not yet established. Number 13, Darangan are believed to be old and it's a narrative poetry. 14. Hudhud is an epic poem and deals with the story of the great culture of Ifugao as it's about a mythical creation. Number 15. Alim the Sister of Ifugao epic deals with the life of the gods and happenings in the sky world. 16. Oral lore or all oral traditions or oral lore is a form of human communication wherein knowledge, art, ideas, and cultural materials is received, preserved, and transmitted orally from one generation to another. The transmission is through speech or songs and may include folktales, ballads, chants, prose, or poetry. Proverbs. Define and give one example. A proverb is a short sentence that people often quote, which gives advice or tells you something about life. For example, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Riddle. Riddle is a word puzzle in which one player asks a confusing question and the other player has to figure out its meaning. Riddles often rely on puns and double entendres. What is iron on a horse but leather on a man? Loa is a folk tradition mirrors the Ilonggo's folks, creative or poetic intuition. It encapsulates in a single form the workings of the creative mind of the Ilonggo's folks or the common tao. Example, Rosas, Rosas, nga kamanti. Myth. A myth is a well-known story which was made up in the past to explain natural events or to justify religious beliefs or social customs. Hercules and the lion. Legend. Legend is a prose fiction in which explains the origin of things, place, objects, and everything we see. Example is the Legend of Makahia. 22. Folk songs. A traditional or composed songs typically characterized by a stanzaic form, refrain, and simplicity of melody. 23. Epic. Epic is a narrative poem which accounts the heroic exploits of community hero, usually involving superhuman abilities. Example, Hudhud ni Aliguyon. That would be all and thank you for listening. Again, this is Dimer Sigba from English 3A.